Exclusive contract novel from Feilu Novel Network. Unprecedented. How will my daughter's mecha be fined for speeding? Crossing parallel worlds and activating research systems. As long as we continue to research and develop, we will successfully develop higher-level technology. Due to his love for scientific research, countless high-tech products have been developed by Su Chuan in recent years. Spider-Man spinneret. Mature artificial intelligence. Energy aggregation device. A mecha for solo combat. I thought I would keep silently researching and developing, but to my surprise, my daughter ranked first in the exam and wanted a reward. Su Chuan happened to be in a critical period of research and development, so he casually sent her to the warehouse to choose something as a reward. Not long after, the traffic police department on Chenghua Avenue. Xiao Liu, you're lucky. This road is a strictly regulated road in the city, and there are no violations at all. Before the words could be finished, a black shadow swept past, followed by a speedometer on the side that directly exploded the meter 888, provoking the authorities openly, ignoring road regulations, and pursuing me. When everyone saw that the previous speeding shadow was a high-speed rail bump, they were all confused and said, unprecedented. How will a mecha be fined for speeding? Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Daughter ranked first in the exam and wants a reward. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Daughter ranked first in the exam and wants a reward. The sound of electric current exploding from the house. The noisy sound of metal falling to the ground immediately fell. The young man among them had a calm expression, as if he had already seen nothing strange. He seemed to be muttering words such as energy and drive to himself, as if in a daze. Some messy hair cannot change his temperament, even though there are some stains on his face, his handsome appearance cannot be concealed. The young man's expression remained unchanged, his gaze fixed straight ahead. Several virtual screens appeared before my eyes. Meanwhile, complex data appears densely packed from the virtual screen. Parts that do not know their purpose are arranged in an orderly manner in a 3D projection around them. At the same time, the pure mechanical platform in front of me began to change. Keyboard after keyboard replaced the platform for no apparent reason. If someone else could see such a scene in front of them, it would probably be extremely shocking. This is like a scene from a science fiction movie, staged in front of him in an incredibly realistic way. His name is Su Chuan, a traveler. A few years ago, during a scientific research project, I had an accident and traveled to Blue Star. I also picked up a little girl by chance. Although reborn, Su Chuan is still full of regret for the previous project. In the midst of his passion for scientific research, he resolutely embarked on the path of scientific research. His gaze fixed on the virtual screen in front of him. In Su Chuan's eyes, there are not only densely packed data, but also things that others cannot observe. Rows of simple data appeared in his eyes. Research System Host. Su Chuan Level. LV1, with continuous research and development, higher-level technology will be developed, basic drawing, primary material production and research and development elementary equipment drawings. As a member of the army of travelers, Su Chuan naturally did not hold back. Everything in front of him is his research system. There is no doubt that Su Chuan's attitude towards scientific research is also incredibly addictive and passionate. During the day, apart from maintaining physical functions, almost all the remaining time is spent on scientific research. In this laboratory, all his research achievements are displayed. With the help of the system, Su Chuan has almost gone smoothly on the road of scientific research. Countless precision instruments and mechanical equipment have been successfully crafted by Su Chuan. If these things are placed on the level of world technology, almost every one of them can cause a sensation. It can even cause turbulence in the academic community. Many of them are even too advanced for the current level of Blue Star technology. The sound of click kept coming out. After being processed by several precision instruments, a part finally fell into the hands of Su Chuan. Success. Su Chuan stared at the system panel and smiled. This success has unlocked a brand new technology. His fingertips touched the complex keyboards, constantly typing in the basic parameters of this technology. And the adaptability and status under various environments and temperatures. Data jumps one by one on the virtual screen. In just a moment, an object reappeared in front of Su Chuan in 3D projection. At the same time as every technology opens up, it will have more or less impact on previous technologies. Su Chuan took a breath and the surrounding instruments and machinery began to operate, preparing to develop this newly unlocked technology. At this point, the virtual screen has changed. A green text appeared and occupied the entire screen. Daughter enters the residence. This was deliberately designed by Su Chuan because he almost forgot his daughter several times due to research and development. He was momentarily taken aback and then looked at the time on the screen. March 17, 07. It's actually 5 o'clock. Because I was too addicted to scientific research, I didn't even realize that school was over after just a while. After Su Yenhua returned home, he almost immediately rushed straight into the laboratory. After identifying each door as a daughter, they automatically opened it to allow it to pass. In less than a moment, Su Yenhua had already arrived at the laboratory bouncing around. Dad! The cute and excited voice interrupted him. I saw Xiao Su Yenhua lift his head and look at Su Chuan with Buling in his eyes. Her pretty face turned slightly red, with her hands behind her, hiding an A3-sized test paper. Su Chuan smiled slightly and gently touched Su Yenhua's head, saying, "What's going on? I'm so happy." Upon hearing Su Chuan's words, Xiao Su Yenhua finally brought his small hand behind him, along with the A3 paper. Dad, look. At this moment, Su Chuan's gaze fell on the piece of paper. The paper turns green and feels slightly rough to the touch, which is a commonly used type of paper in schools. This is a transcript. His gaze followed the list. In the complex list, Su Yenhua's position is not difficult to find. Because the first place is Su Yenhua's name. It is obvious that this represents that Su Yenhua, a young student, achieved the best result in the class in this exam. Su Chuan looked down. At this moment, Su Yenhua blinked his eyes and looked at Su Chuan with anticipation on his face, as his nervous little hand unconsciously clenched its fist. It seems like waiting for Su Chuan's praise. Watching this scene, Su Chuan unconsciously smiled and picked up his daughter, praising her. My daughter ranked first in the class, it's amazing. In that moment, Su Chuan also felt the joy of being a father. After hearing his father's praise, Su Yenhua also laughed along. After a moment, she lifted her head and glanced at Su Chuan, becoming a bit hesitant. Dad, when my classmate ranked first in the last exam, he was rewarded with a robot toy. Seeing his daughter's adorable appearance, Su Chuan chuckled out loud. Can he still not be clear about such obvious hints to himself? This little girl clearly wants to reward herself. Su Chuan smiled and said. So, do you also want Dad to reward you? The girl nodded wildly like a little chicken pecking at rice. What reward do you want? Su Chuan asked. At this moment, Su Yenhua's eyes suddenly became confused, as if thinking about what he wanted. Finally, she shook her head and felt a bit confused. This made Su Chuan feel a bit embarrassed, and he showed a look of contemplation. Let Dad think carefully, what's the reward for? P.S. The new book is not easy. I beg everyone to give me some flowers, tips, feedback, and comments. Thank you. Chapter 2. Baba, I want this big robot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. I want this big robot. Su Chuan's gaze wandered around, pondering how to reward his daughter. In front of him, Su Yenhua gently looked up with a hopeful expression in his eyes. Who can refuse such a gaze? Su Chuan quickly thought of a place, an amusement park. For an 11-year-old child, amusement parks often have unique charm. But soon, Su Chuan's face showed a look of embarrassment again. If it were for normal times, it would probably be to go out and have fun with my daughter. Unfortunately, today this has just unlocked the latest technology, and we haven't had a chance to start developing it yet. In just an instant, Su Chuan gave up the idea of going out to play. Just as his gaze fell not far away, Su Chuan's eyes suddenly lit up. That was a door, and because of that, his thoughts instantly became clear. Because behind this door lies most of Su Chuan's research achievements over the years. There are quite a few toys inside. It's better to take it out for my daughter to play with while looking at the warehouse inside. Su Chuan squatted down and looked at Xiao Liu seriously, saying, Yenhua, how about Daddy taking you to see Daddy's big baby? Su Yenhua gently tilted his head and said, What? I saw Su Chuan with a mysterious expression on his face, holding on to little Loli's small hand and walking towards the research warehouse. Children, curiosity is inherently strong. The more so, Su Yenhua became even more curious. Wait until Su Chuan stands in front of the door. Another virtual screen appears. The text above kept flickering. Scanning iris. Confirming identity. Identity confirmation. At this moment, the mechanical door in front of Su Chuan automatically opened. Su Chuan and his daughter walked in step by step, crossing the triple mechanical door to truly enter the research warehouse. The space inside is even more spacious than imagined. Even Su Yenhua's mouth opened slightly in surprise at this moment. The first thing that catches the eye is the rotating exhibition booths one by one. There is a virtual screen on the side of each booth, describing the purpose of the items on each booth. Inside are various scientific research achievements of Su Chuan. Of course, there are also small toys he makes during his leisure time when he is bored. For example, Spider-Man's spinneret or something. Su Yenhua's eyes opened wide, clearly attracted by the dazzling array of items here. Xiao Liu was first attracted by a shining booth. She pointed at the inquiry with her small hand and asked, Dad, what is this? Su Chuan shook his head with a smile. This is just an energy aggregation device, not much fun. Let's go take a look at the back. He glanced at the device with some nostalgia. When I successfully developed this device myself, I didn't know how excited I was. This research and development can also be considered a milestone in Su Chuan's R&D career. Xiao Liu let out a cry and continued walking towards the inside with some reluctance. What is placed in front are some early research and development achievements of Su Chuan. Most of them are instruments and devices. Soon, Su Yenhua was once again attracted by an object and stopped. Her eyes lit up with small stars. Dad, what is this? Su Chuan glanced casually and the corner of his mouth twitched. A few words describing the virtual screen on the side. Micro remote blasting device. He deliberately frightened. Yenhua, this is a bomb, it's very dangerous. I thought after explaining, Su Yenhua would be afraid of the mountain fire. I didn't expect little Loli's eyes to become even brighter. She lifted her head, her eyes full of innocence, and pointed excitedly ahead. I want this. Dad, I'm going to use this to blow up the school. In this way, I won't have to do homework anymore. Puff. Su Chuan couldn't hold back for a moment. Little Loli's ideas are simply too dangerous. How many elementary school students' dreams have this little guy spoken of? He shook his head and said firmly. Yenhua, it's not possible. Looking at Su Chuan's resolute appearance, little Loli let out a low, somewhat disappointed "oh." Su Yenhua lowered his head slightly and continued to walk towards the inside, roast in a low voice. Dad is so stingy. He won't give this or that either. Looking at this scene, Su Chuan also felt somewhat helpless. It's impossible for you to really blow up the school, right? His gaze swept ahead and finally breathed a sigh of relief. The high-risk research achievement area has finally been completed. There are no dangerous goods left behind. At this moment, Su Chuan's face showed a confident expression and he said. Yenhua, Dad promises you that everything behind this, as long as it's what you like. You choose one yourself, Dad will definitely give it to you. Xiao Liu blinked her eyes and asked, really? Su Chuan nodded and said, really. After receiving the affirmation, Su Yenhua immediately laughed and walked towards the front, bouncing and jumping. Compared to before, Su Yenhua walked faster this time. On both sides of the booth, little Loli hardly glanced at the strangely shaped machines. Su Chuan took a leisurely glance at the back. Yenhua, walk slowly, he shouted softly. Little Loli turned around with a smile and made a funny face, full of innocence and innocence. Slightly abbreviated. This little girl. Su Chuan's eyes showed indulgence, while he breathed a sigh of relief. But now we can finally focus on research with peace of mind. There is nothing worth worrying about in the remaining area. Let little Loli pick whatever she wants. Su Chuan turned around and walked towards the nearby laboratory. In the research warehouse, Xiao Liu's footsteps suddenly slowed down. Her gaze turned in one direction, her eyes hooked on the other side, and her throat involuntarily swallowed. Following Su Yenhua's gaze, there was a huge exhibition stand not far away. Looking up from the booth, the item still stands at a height of 4 or 5 meters. That is a huge robot that maintains a semi-kneeling position without moving. It is obvious that being able to store in this research warehouse is not a model, but a real mecha. Su Yenhua was completely shocked by the scene before him. The huge mecha in front of her completely shattered her childish cognition and overturned her outlook on life. After all, the last robot she saw was the palm-sized plastic model in her classmate's hand. The two cannot be compared at all. In a moment, Su Yenhua finally came to his senses. She pointed to the mech in the distance and shouted excitedly. Dad, I want this big robot. P.S. The new book is not easy. I beg everyone to give me some flowers, tips, feedback, and comments. Thank you. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 3. Mechanical Power Armor, Start. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Mechanical Power Armor, Start. This mecha was created by Su Chuan 6 months ago. Initially, in order to manufacture this mecha, Su Chuan hardly ever went out. It took a lot of effort and time. Among numerous works, this can also be considered one of Su Chuan's more satisfactory works. The mecha's overall color scheme leans towards blue, which is Yen Noa's favorite color. Dad, I want this big robot. At this moment, Su Yenhua's faint voice came from the research warehouse. Su Chuan, who was dedicated to research in the laboratory, didn't hear what little Loli was saying. He responded loudly and perfunctorily. Okay. He was not worried at all. After all, there were no high-risk equipment or items in the remaining areas. At this moment, he was wearing a pair of gloves and his right hand was playing with a precision metal part. For the convenience of observation, he also wears a pair of inch glasses in his left eye. This is a brand new technology that the system has just unlocked. In just a moment, Su Chuan became addicted to it. The content on the virtual screen beside him is constantly changing. Many complex data are automatically calculated within it. And Su Chuan is constantly experimenting with the accuracy of the parts, murmuring to himself. In theory, in the simulation, this data should be correct. At this point, Su Chuan was completely immersed in his own world. In his eyes, it seems that there is only research and development involved. For the mecha selected by Su Yenhua, he was also completely unaware of little Loli's movements at this moment. After receiving his father's approval, Su Yenhua cautiously approached the mecha. Under this massive mecha, little Loli appears particularly small. How big? For Su Yenhua, who had a limited vocabulary, he didn't know how to describe his shock at this moment. And more in my heart, there is admiration for my father. Dad, how amazing! Her eyes were filled with joy, and her right hand slowly touched the mech. The icy touch of metal emanated from the hand, and the mech did not undergo any changes. The whole body of mecha is manufactured using special alloys. Not only resistant to impact, but also heat-resistant and cold-resistant, able to adapt to various extreme environments. It even has a certain elastic deformation effect and memory function. That is to say, even if the mecha suffers from terrifying devastation and produces a depression, it will self-repair. However, it is obvious that this is not very likely. In the current civilization technology of Blue Star, there are very few that can cause such great damage to this mecha. Su Yenhua's left hand also touched the mecha. The overall blue color scheme of the mecha has made her increasingly fond of it. After a brief encounter, little Loli completely let go of her hands and feet. I saw her lift her hand and take a glance. Su Yenhua started to climb up towards the mecha with his hands and feet. In the program settings of mecha, there are actually self-protection and anti-intrusion functions. But unfortunately, Su Yenhua, this little Loli, had already been added to the whitelist. The mecha had no response to little Loli's movements and stood quietly in place. After trying to climb several times, little Loli finally chose to give up. After all, with Su Yenhua's current height, he simply can't rank up. At most, it's just climbing along the mech to the position of the instep. She couldn't even climb up those half-kneeling thighs and knees. But soon, Su Yenhua's gaze turned to the other side. The left hand of the mecha hangs unnaturally on the ground. At the same time, hold your palms up and lay them flat on the side. On the huge palm of the mecha, there are densely packed small patterns. Su Yenhua immediately became interested and crawled towards the palm of the mecha lying flat on the ground. Su Yenhua, who was curious and exploring around, didn't notice that she accidentally touched the manual start device of the mecha. This is a hidden manual device reserved by Su Chuan to prevent accidents. A hidden small switch. You should know that this hidden manual device will only activate by touching several parts in a specific order. ZZ. A small startup sound came from the mecha. Su Yenhua blinked his eyes and turned around, not noticing any abnormalities in the mecha. At this moment, Su Yenhua was like a child who accidentally made a mistake. She covered her mouth with both hands and looked around. After waiting for a few seconds, the mech did not take any action. She just breathed a sigh of relief. Whew! Just as she was about to fall out of the hand of the mecha, the long silent mecha seemed to have come to life. Its eyes began to sparkle with light. And Su Yenhua's palm suddenly moved under his feet. She widened her eyes and said in a daze. The robot moved. At the same time, at the heart of the mecha, the hatch slowly unfolded. The left robotic arm slowly ascended into the air, bringing Su Yenhua closer to the cabin door. Little Loli watched helplessly as she grew further and further away from the ground. The ascent of the robotic arm did not bring any sense of weightlessness, and little Loli did not feel any discomfort. Without giving Su Yenhua any chance to react, he was suddenly sent into the cabin door by the left hand of the mecha. Subsequently, the cabin door automatically closes. Only when little Loli reacted from the shock did she shout loudly, "Dad!" However, at this moment, inside the cockpit of the mecha, no matter what, shout loudly. I'm afraid Su Chuan can't even hear it. For a moment, little Loli suddenly felt a bit at a loss. What should we do now? I seem to have been locked up by a robot. Although located in the cockpit of the mecha, for little Loli, she can still observe her surroundings very clearly. Su Yenhua shouted loudly in the direction of Su Chuan. Dad! Attempting to call out to Su Chuan's little Loli is destined to be in vain. The mecha remained motionless in place, its eyes slowly flickering with light. It seems like waiting for some instruction. This is originally an emergency manual start device, and it is set up very discreetly. Su Chuan never dreamed that the mecha would be activated by such a coincidence. At this moment, Su Yenhua also felt a bit helpless, thinking to himself. I won't cause any trouble, will I? However, this is a gift from my dad as a reward, so he shouldn't blame me. Dad will definitely not blame me. After comforting herself for a while, Xiao Liu also firmly believed in her statement. P.S. The new book is not easy. I beg everyone to give me some flowers, tips, feedback, and comments. Thank you. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 4. Someone exceeded the speed limit, it seems like a mecha. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Someone is speeding, it seems like a mecha. After waiting for a while, I realized that I didn't seem to be in any danger. Su Yenhua was not as panicked anymore. Instead, he looked curiously inside the cockpit of the mecha. There is no imagined dimness everywhere. There are many strange buttons around the cockpit of the mecha. There are still many words that she cannot understand. These are switches used to manually control the mecha. However, it is obvious that as a mecha developed by Su Chuan, how could it be manual? These manual devices are emergency devices after the AI system is damaged and paralyzed. In regular driving, it is not necessary at all. If it comes to the difficulty of operation, the driving of the mecha may be simpler than that of all vehicles. I looked around for a long time. Su Yenhua muttered to herself with some curiosity. I don't know if this big robot can walk. At this moment, the mecha suddenly responded. To walk, the mecha needs to be started. Do you want to start it? How can a big robot speak? Su Yenhua was startled by the sudden response from the mecha, but quickly realized it. She nodded excitedly. Start. The mechanical sound responds again. Automatically opening the mecha dedicated channel. I saw that the ceiling wall above the mecha automatically opened and turned out to be a dedicated channel for the mecha. And this huge mecha suddenly stood up, spewing flames from the soles of its feet and soaring up the exclusive passage. In theory, such a massive and bulky mecha may be relatively cumbersome to move. In fact, it is very sensitive. At the same time, the positions of each joint involve mechanical effects. Among them, the AI system developed by Su Chuan was also inserted. This is clearly not on the same level as the so-called artificial intelligence in the world today. If the current level of intelligence of AI in the world is the average intelligence of canine species, so the AI developed by Su Chuan has completely reached the level of normal human intelligence. Moreover, we will strictly abide by the rules set by Su Chuan. With such a system, the difficulty of driving the mecha is greatly reduced. Together with Su Yenhua, they can easily drive. Just give instructions, and the mecha can automatically fulfill them. At this moment, Su Chuan, who was studying diligently in the laboratory, did not notice any abnormalities at all. Suddenly, his eyelids twitched. Suddenly thought in Su Chuan's heart. Why don't we go see Su Yenhua? Just as he had an idea, Su Chuan slapped himself. Now is the crucial time to study this technology. How can I be distracted? If there is a mistake, it is uncertain that the laboratory will experience daily explosions. Automatically avoiding obstacles. A mechanical sound came out. Inside the mecha, little Loli looked around with an innocent expression. Big robot, surprisingly able to move on its own. Gradually, Su Yenhua quickly adapted to the internal situation of the mecha. She excitedly opened her eyes and looked into the distance. I'm going over there. Charge, charge. It is obvious that Xiao Liu has not yet realized the speed of the mecha. This is such a terrifying speed for the outside world. Automatically relieves all external pressure inside the mecha. She didn't notice anything unusual in the mecha, just like sitting in a regular car before. The only thing she could feel was that the mecha was much more stable than the car. The so-called feeling of pushing the back, weightlessness, and motion sickness were completely absent. The most important point is that Su Yenhua did not shy away from driving the mecha directly on public roads. Buzz. Outside the mecha, the sound of braking through the air came roaring. The terrifying speed of the mecha directly stirred up huge waves on the road. It feels like a gust of wind is blowing. The place where the mecha passed by raised a lot of small dust, and the garbage that had not yet been cleaned was also blown into the air. However, these did not affect traffic operations. Of course, the mecha has an automatic avoidance system that does not cause any collisions, and naturally there are no traffic accidents. A middle-aged man looked at the remaining cigarette but in his mouth and lost in thought. Then he turned around and was about to curse loudly, looking at the empty road when suddenly he couldn't speak. For a moment, he spat and took out another cigarette from his cigarette case, whispering to himself. I'm unlucky, I'll see the ghosts in broad daylight. At the current speed of the mecha, no one can see clearly what has happened. No panic was triggered, even on complex road sections. At most, people just feel dizzy and a strange wind comes. On Chenghua Avenue in Ningjing City. This is one of the heavily regulated roads in the city, with traffic police on duty almost every day. Their daily work is to check for violations and speeding. An old traffic police officer stood on the side, holding a small notebook in his hand, unsure of what was being written. Not far from him, a young traffic police officer was holding a tripod and placing it aside. When placing it, he shook it left and right, as if to confirm the stability of the tripod. Then the young traffic police officer took out another speedometer and installed it on the tripod. These are all professional equipment, not only for speed measurement, but also with high-definition capture cameras and speed measurement displays, so that citizens can observe their own speed. The old traffic police officer said with a smile. Xiao Liu, you're lucky. This road is a strictly regulated road in the city, and there are no violations at all. The words have just fallen. Buzz. A gust of wind broke through and a mecha roared past. At the same time, the speed measuring equipment began to sound alarms of beep and beep. The old traffic police officer looked at the messy little notebook in his hand and couldn't speak for a moment. He straightened the crooked hat on his head and turned his gaze to the speedometer display. The 3 digits 888 flicker frequently. He widened his eyes and took a closer look. I wiped it. Did the speed hit the odometer? The old traffic police officer has been employed for so long, and this is the first time they have encountered such a situation. He said in a deep voice. Provoking traffic police openly and ignoring road regulations. I have never seen such an arrogant person before. He smoothed out the messy notebook and turned around to shout. Xiao Liu, I want to see who is so arrogant. I will definitely take down his car. Chase me. The traffic police officer named Xiao Liu was staring wide-eyed and stuttering ahead. He kept staring at the road, only to see a silhouette and said with some uncertainty. Lao. Lao Zhang, good. It seems like a mecha. Lao Zhang, the traffic police officer, almost laughed angrily upon hearing this and immediately retorted. Fuck your mother, are you still a mech? Little rabbit, what nonsense is it? P.S. The new book is not easy. I beg everyone to give me some flowers, tips, feedback, and comments. Thank you. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 5. Strange Photos, Is It Really a Mech? You are listening at novelfull.audio. P.S. The new book is not easy. I beg everyone to give me some flowers, tips, feedback, and comments. Thank you. Chapter 5. Strange Photos, Is It Really a Mech? Lao Zhang is a very old and conservative middle-aged man. I have been fulfilling my duties as a traffic police officer since I joined. Do you think a person who is still using an elderly phone would believe the word Mecha? How could Lao Zhang, who had not even successfully adapted to his smartphone, believe the nonsense of Mecha that Xiao Liu said? I saw him anxiously walking onto the road, looking at the end of the road and muttering in a low voice. Damn it, can't you see any shadows in just this moment? Young people nowadays are really becoming less and less faithful. Reading in his mouth, Lao Zhang's hand movements did not stop. That's really a mecha. Xiao Liu, who was somewhat dissatisfied on one side, opened his mouth to defend himself. However, Lao Zhang paid no attention and casually threw the small notebook in his hand that was responsible for recording into the back of the police car, running towards it. The driver's door has also been opened. Stop talking nonsense, I don't have time to listen to your nonsense. Hurry up and get in the car. Lao Zhang's annoying voice came through. Catching this kind of overtaking can't be delayed for a second. The young police officer exclaimed, "Oh," without refuting anything, and quickly got into the car with a high-speed capture camera. After all, for current technology, mechas and the like seem somewhat absurd. After pondering for a long time, Xiao Liu also began to doubt himself. Is it really that I misread? Old Zhang smiled and murmured. I haven't really driven a fast car for many years. Xiao Liu, fasten your seatbelt and hold it steady. Buzz, buzz. With the sound of the alarm and the roar of the engine, the police car also instantly started. This is a strong sense of pushing back. Even if he was wearing this seatbelt, Xiao Liu instinctively grabbed the handle above the car door. Lao Zhang stared ahead and did not find the illegal vehicle he wanted to arrest at the end of his field of vision. For so many years, no speeding car has been able to escape his palm. His right hand kept shifting gears. I saw Lao Zhang forcefully push the gear towards the front right, fifth gear. With Lao Zhang stepping on the accelerator, it reached the limit speed of an ordinary police car. From the beginning to now, in less than 20 seconds, there are very few ordinary police cars that can complete this kind of acceleration. However, even so, they still couldn't eat the exhaust of that illegal vehicle. At this moment, Lao Zhang's forehead also began to overflow with a drop of sweat. At this time, it is difficult to control complex road sections at this speed. Even Xiao Liu, who was sitting in the passenger seat, became nervous and tightly grasped the handle above the car door with his right hand. At the same time, he also endured the physical discomfort at this speed. Even as a traffic police officer, Xiao Liu couldn't help but feel the urge to vomit. He struggled and said to the old traffic police. Lao Zhang, why don't we just forget about it? I can't catch up anymore. When he heard the three words unable to catch up, the old traffic police officer gritted his teeth, clearly feeling a bit dissatisfied. He looked straight ahead and lifted the handbrake with his right hand. A creaking sound came out. This police car completed a perfect drift from an incredible angle. Fuck your mother, how could I not catch up? Lao Zhang gritted his teeth in a voice. If it were someone else, this drift would definitely have been spit out. Young police officers are at least professionally trained, but their desire to vomit has increased a bit. The strong discomfort left Xiao Liu with no intention of talking and arguing with Lao Zhang anymore. Lao Zhang's driving skills are definitely a top-ranking presence in the traffic police team. However, he had a delusion of catching up with a mecha. This approach is absolutely naive to outsiders. Under the unwavering determination of the old traffic police, the pursuit lasted for nearly 10 minutes, and the police car surprisingly did not see the shadow of the mecha. Finally, at a crossroads, the police car began to slow down. At this moment, the old traffic police officer took out a pack of soft-shell cigarettes that he had smoked a lot from his shirt pocket and lit one from inside. He took a strong puff on his cigarette, exhaled mist, and then the old traffic police officer spat through the window, along with the cigarette he had taken a puff, onto the ground. TMD didn't catch up, they lost. Lao Zhang's displeased voice came out. Since we can't catch up, the last resort is to contact the headquarters team. The headquarters team is able to dispatch personnel to retrieve high-definition capture camera data from various regions in real time. At the same time, other traffic police can cooperate with the operation and carry out joint interception under the command of the headquarters. Xiao Liu, please contact the headquarters brigade for support. He held on to the steering wheel with one hand, feeling somewhat helpless. Alright now, it's embarrassing to be thrown into the main team. Now everyone knows that Lao Zhang actually made a mistake. Without knowing the target's route, he cannot take a shortcut and intercept it in advance. After waiting for a while, the co-pilot surprisingly showed no response. Lao Zhang shouted again in annoyance, Xiao Liu, Xiao Liu. At this moment, the young traffic police officer sat in the passenger seat, holding high-definition capture cameras in his hands and froze motionless. The old traffic police officer was in a hurry and couldn't help but feel a bit angry. At least I graduated from a well-known police academy, why is my psychological quality so poor? Lao Zhang looked ahead, slowed down the speed, and pulled out his hand to hit the young traffic police officer. What is Xiao Liu doing? At this moment, Xiao Liu finally came to his senses. In his eyes, there was a look of shock, and the expression on his face was full of disbelief. For an ordinary person, the appearance of a mecha is indeed too bizarre. It seems like something that only appears in science fiction movies, suddenly arriving in reality. On the high-speed camera, a photo came into view. Although somewhat blurry, the shape on the photo and the shape that can be easily distinguished at a glance. The eerie motion curve of the mecha is definitely not something that cars can achieve. These pieces of evidence can almost conclude that under the capture of this high-speed camera, it may really be a mecha. If it weren't for the footage captured by this high-speed camera, no one would have believed this fact. The young traffic police quickly displayed the high-speed camera footage towards the direction of the old traffic police officer. Lao Zhang, look at this. It seems like it's really a mecha. P.S. The new book is not easy. I beg everyone to give me some flowers, tips, feedback, and comments. Thank you. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 6. Report to the leader, we have discovered a. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Report to the leader, we have discovered a mecha. Lao Zhang, look at this. It really seems like a mecha. The voice of the young traffic police fell. Lao Zhang's gaze also turned towards the high-speed camera. He lost his mind. Because the images on high-speed cameras are too stunning. His eyes were captivated by the image, and on a road, a blue shadow of a mecha silhouette roared past. That blurry outline seemed to have truly emerged from a science fiction movie. In the next moment, Lao Zhang immediately regained his senses and stepped on the brake. This is driving, and distraction inevitably comes at a cost. Along with it comes a strong sense of imbalance caused by sudden braking. Squeak. The sound of the tire rubbing against the ground came out. This police car unexpectedly lost control and crashed into the green belt, forcing it to stop. Fortunately, there was not much traffic on this road and it did not cause any other impact. In theory, after encountering such an accident, the condition of the car body should be checked as soon as possible. If the vehicle is functioning properly, it needs to be parked on the roadside. However, the old traffic police still care about these things now. Lao Zhang snatched the high-speed camera from the young traffic police officer's hand and stared intently at the scene above. At the same time, he began flipping through the illuminated area captured by the high-speed camera. When flipping to a certain place, Xiao Liu excitedly shouted loudly. Lao Zhang, this is the photo. He placed his finger on the slightly blurry blue phantom. Look, this position. At this moment, the old traffic police officer was still hesitating because the picture in the picture was slightly blurry. In his heart, it was clear that he still could not acknowledge the existence of Mecha. He hesitated for a moment as he looked at the high-speed camera in his hand, then continued to flip towards the image behind him. As the screen turned, the old traffic police officer was stunned. I feel numb. Unlike before, the image in this photo is incredibly clear. This is indeed a mecha. From the height of the mecha, the edges of each part, and the unique blue appearance. Every part is delicately outlined. He stood still for a long time, unsure of what to say. At this moment, the walkie-talkie on the left chest of the old traffic police suddenly rang. Lao Zhang, please answer if you receive it. He ignored it and murmured in a slightly hoarse voice. Surprisingly, it's really a mecha. There was a moment of silence on the other side of the walkie-talkie, seeming somewhat speechless before shouting in a tone that was not annoying. What mech, do you still want this support? At this moment, Lao Zhang and the young traffic police finally came to their senses. Xiao Liu did not answer the walkie-talkie, but instead looked towards the old traffic police officer, waiting for their decision. Lao Zhang hesitated a bit, thinking to himself. Such a high-tech thing must have been created by National Scientific Research. If it were a special confidential project and I acted rashly, wouldn't it be exposing national secrets? That's a capital offense. After pondering for a moment, Lao Zhang had a plan in his mind. He coughed and opened the walkie-talkie to respond. Well, we don't need any support here. The walkie-talkie paused slightly and murmured softly. What's up? At this moment, Lao Zhang breathed a sigh of relief. His cheeks were dripping with sweat, and he nodded secretly. The young traffic police officer on one side showed a puzzled expression. Lao Zhang, this. The old traffic police officer smiled and spoke with a serious and thoughtful tone, as if he had come over. Do you know that we almost lost our lives just now? Upon hearing this, Xiao Liu took a cold breath in his heart. Hush. Is this really as serious as you said? The old traffic police glanced at him and leisurely lit another cigarette for himself. When he spat out a mouthful of mist, he spoke up. Do you think this mech looks like a state secret? The young police officer instantly regained his senses, sweating profusely from behind and feeling shocked in his heart. Sleeping slot, if this is really a state secret, if it leaks out, it will be really over. He asked in some panic. Lao Zhang, we both saw it with our own eyes, shouldn't there be anything wrong? Lao Zhang is obviously someone who has experienced the old world, and by comparison, he has become much more calm. He waved his hand and said calmly. The problem shouldn't be too big. I'll report it to my superiors later and see their attitude. As long as we truthfully state the situation, there will be no problem. At this moment, the young traffic police finally breathed a sigh of relief. A moment later, at the traffic police squadron. A slightly damaged police car drove in, with several leaves hanging on the front glass of the car. The front of the car is even more outrageous, with a few branches hanging. An old traffic police officer walked out of the driver's seat, while another young police officer also got out of the car and followed behind the old traffic police officer. He was still holding a high-speed camera tightly in his hand. These two people are exactly the same as Lao Zhang and Xiao Liu before. Lao Zhang did not walk up to the office building immediately, but finished smoking his cigarette next to the trash can downstairs before stepping in. In the office building, smoking is prohibited. If placed on weekdays, you can see many people smoking downstairs. The two walked to the rightmost office on the third floor of the office building. There is a sign hanging on the door. Traffic Police Squadron Leader's Office. Compared to the past, Lao Zhang knocked on the door with an unparalleled degree of formality. "Please come in." The voice of the captain can be heard inside. At this moment, Lao Zhang opened the door and stepped in. At this moment, the captain was sitting in his seat, looking down at some document. On the desk, there is a nameplate placed. Traffic Police Squadron. He Wei. After noticing the two of them entering, He Wei first looked up and then picked up the thermos from the table. He blew lightly towards the mouth of the cup twice before taking a sip. Finally, He Wei Kai calmly questioned. "What are you two doing here without leaving your jobs during work?" Lao Zhang smiled faintly, clearly lacking the aura of authority in front of his superiors. He took the high-speed camera from Xiao Liu's hand and quickly flipped it in a familiar position. That incredibly clear photo of the mecha. "Report to the leader, we have discovered a mecha." "What?" "Mech." He Wei, who was originally calm and composed, couldn't stand up and leaned towards the high-speed camera. He frowned slightly and asked with suspicion. "Is this really what you captured?" "Zhang Guozheng, you must take responsibility for what you say. This is a mecha, and most people may not calm down when they see such a scene." Lao Zhang nodded with a positive expression on his face. "High-speed cameras, can there still be counterfeits?" He looked around and made sure there was no one, then leaned in the captain's ear and whispered. "Leader, isn't this a secret weapon of the country?" At this moment, He Wei frowned slightly, with an uncertain expression on his face. If it's really what Lao Zhang said, then this matter is a state secret. Then he nodded. "I need to report to the brigade to understand the situation. You did a great job with this. Keep the high-speed camera and go back to work. P.S. The new book is not easy. I beg everyone to give me some flowers, tips, feedback, and comments. Thank you. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 7. It's speeding, stop it first before speaking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. It's speeding, stop it first before speaking. Wait until Lao Zhang and Xiao Liu leave the office. Captain He Wei of the squadron quickly stood up and locked the office door. Then he took out his phone and dialed a familiar phone number. "Hello, is that the brigade?" "Well, it's me. What's the matter with He Wei?" "When my subordinates were working here, I captured a speeding mecha." The other party was stunned for a moment. "What? A mech? What are you joking about?" He Wei spoke in a serious tone. "I saw it with my own eyes from a high-speed camera. I'll send you the photos to take a look." Speaking, the phone vibrated and the photo was sent over. After seeing the photo on the other side, there was a moment of silence. "What do you mean?" The platoon leader nodded. "I want to ask, is this a national confidential project?" For a long time, the other side suddenly said. "Wait a moment, I need to report this to the support team and inquire about their attitude." Doodle doodle. Hang up the phone. After a moment, the entire traffic management department of Ningjing City suddenly held an emergency meeting. Outside the traffic police detachment, countless police cars arrived. In the conference hall, almost all the leaders from the traffic management department, inside and outside, came here. All leaders are looking towards the central projection. That is a screenshot of a mech speeding. What is everyone's opinion on the issue of mecha speeding? There was a commotion below. Machine. Mecha. How could it be possible? This. Everyone was stunned. I never expected that this emergency meeting would be held for this mecha. Moreover, mecha is 2SCI.fi. This mecha shouldn't be considered a motor vehicle, right? There was a burst of laughter below, but upon seeing the majestic expressions of the leaders above, the laughter came to a sudden halt. After a long discussion, almost everyone remained silent and didn't want to intervene, without taking the initiative to express their position. Who knows if it's a state secret? Almost no one dares to express their opinions. At this moment, a knocking on the door broke the silence of the conference room. The leader above glanced at the silent crowd and said, "Enter." A civilian female traffic police officer walked in with several documents in her hand. At 6:32 p.m., another speeding incident occurred on the Chongyang section. At this moment, the quiet meeting room suddenly became a bit noisy. Just as the words fell, the sound of knocking on the door came again. Another civilian traffic police officer, holding several reports in his hand. Almost all traffic police officers on duty across the country have encountered incidents of mecha speeding. These events have been reported through various channels. The originally noisy conference room suddenly quieted down. The leaders above also began to remain silent. Is this special thing finished or not? At this point, the later civilian traffic police officer continued. At 6:41 p.m., a mecha speeding incident also occurred on Chenghua Avenue. At 6:47 p.m., a mecha speeding incident occurred on Xingxing Road. Just now, there was also a mecha speeding incident on the Ring Road. Upon hearing one, notify and report it. In the conference hall, all the leaders fell silent. This is so endless, isn't it? Are there any other places that provide photos? A director suddenly asked. The civilian female traffic police officer immediately nodded and said, yes. After a moment, photos were presented one by one from the projector. Everyone's gaze converged towards the projection. These photos are uneven, with most of them being slightly blurry, and only a few photos taken by high-speed cameras are clearer. Countless photos are arranged in an orderly manner on the projection. These pictures all have some commonalities. 1. Ordinary violation cameras simply cannot capture clear footage. 2. The mecha presents a blue color scheme as a whole. The details of the mecha captured by the high-speed camera are almost identical. Based on the information and clues provided by these photos, almost everyone can conclude. In this half hour, there have been over 40 speeding violations, all of which are masterpieces of this mecha. This is so arrogant. The leaders are all numb. Moreover, there are still ongoing violations regarding this mecha. Countless on-duty traffic police are constantly submitting the latest information and photos, and cases of mecha speeding have emerged in various regions. At this moment, the director of the Traffic Management Bureau above angrily patted the table. Bang! A dull voice echoed through the closed and quiet conference room. It's completely lawless. He stood up and lowered his head, looking down at the people below, his gaze calm and majestic. The deep voice emanated. This is simply a disregard for traffic laws and a blatant provocation of the Public Security Authority. The director on one side opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but was stared back by the director. I know what you're thinking. Regardless of whether it is a national confidential project, I am responsible for what happens. Anyway, I can't bear this breath. It's speeding, stop it first before we talk. Many people breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this sentence. The director, who had not spoken before, agreed. I've been displeased with it for a long time. It violates the road safety law, and I'm afraid it won't work. Maintaining road security is our responsibility. Even if he is a mecha, as long as he walks on the road, we should be responsible for the people. The director's words drew cheers from everyone below. I agree with Director He's opinion. I agree too. We must intercept this mecha. Too arrogant. Everyone's position instantly became unified. The director stood at the top and spoke in a deep voice. Immediately go to the command center and issue a notice to the entire city's traffic management department. Make sure to intercept this mecha with all your might. Received. Everyone responded without exception. The director glanced at the crowd. I don't believe it anymore. With the help of the entire city's traffic management, we can't even stop a mecha. Break up. Everyone stood up, bowed and left. At this moment, the traffic police on duty at various intersections were simultaneously ringing their chest walkie-talkies. Attention all duty personnel on Chenghua Road, report and intercept any mecha traces immediately. Attention all duty personnel on Shenyuan Road. Once detected, intercept immediately. Attention the duty personnel in the Yunhai area, the mecha may pass through this area in the future, be careful to intercept. In an instant, the peaceful city almost mobilized the police force of the entire city's traffic management department. Almost all major traffic police teams set off together, and almost all police cars were mobilized at once. The sound of police car alarms began to ring throughout the city. P.S. The new book is not easy. I beg everyone to give me some flowers, tips, feedback, and comments. Thank you. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 8. Stupid people, are we catching fugitives? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Stupid people, are we catching fugitives? Temporary Command Center and Monitoring Room of Traffic Police Detachment. At this location, there are surveillance footage of almost the entire city. The entire city's cameras are ultimately connected here. At this moment, the person in charge of this operation, the captain of the detachment, Huang Yong, is attentively observing the surveillance footage. The vice captain beside him rubbed his temples. Intercept the mecha, who can exchange it for? Who doesn't have a big head? He looked at the captain beside him and suggested. Captain, why don't we contact our brother's department to cooperate with our actions? Huang Yong gave him a bad look. This is a matter for our traffic management department, don't you think it's embarrassing? Didn't you just see how the director got angry? At this moment, several traffic police officers who had been staring at the surveillance suddenly shouted loudly. I saw the position of the Mech 10 minutes ago. The peaceful city at this time is not very peaceful. Almost the entire city can hear the sound of surrounding alarms. Several police cars raced past on the street. Countless people gazed curiously. What kind of situation is this? At this time, the masses have not yet felt the seriousness of the matter. A person on the street smiled and said. Oh, 5 police cars, which one is not afraid of racing? They have a row of noodles. Just as the words fell, 5 police cars roared past. The person was taken aback for a moment and looked towards the back. The next moment, others are foolish. How many police cars are these special? On a 50-meter road, surprisingly, police cars were packed. Not only cars, but also countless motorcycles on both sides of the road. All these police cars are warning. The warning lights on the car are constantly flashing. This indicates that these police cars are in a state of alert. What kind of battle is this? Who has seen such a scene before? The buzzing alarm sound was incredibly sharp. This terrifying battle not only attracted countless onlookers in groups. This even scares people who are driving normally on the road. For a moment, those drivers couldn't even press the accelerator and were scared and stopped on the road. He looked at the vast police car across from him, lost in thought. Did I make any mistakes? Who wouldn't panic after watching this scene? Across from you are nearly 100 police cars. The scene is extremely outrageous. The driver was numb on the spot. Who can withstand so many police cars coming head-on? The people are also foolish. Is this particularly reasonable? Is this a normal police scene? Not to mention catching a racing car. If you were to intercept the high-speed rail, I'm afraid some people would believe it. What kind of people are these? Is it worth the level of treatment offered by the traffic management department? On the road, several people pointed and speculated. Are there any top-tier terrorists in our city? Or do you have a wanted criminal at the level of? The other person shook their head. I'm not sure. But I don't think so. One person showed a surprised expression. How do you know it's not? So many police cars are deployed, isn't it still to arrest the wanted criminal? Isn't this row of noodles enough? The other person twitched their lips and pointed to the police car in the distance, saying, Have you ever seen traffic police launch a mission to catch fugitives? For a moment, everyone was speechless. What he said is so reasonable. What is this? Is it a grand theft car? In this way, the people are actually confused. Is it catching overtaking? In the tranquil city, countless central roads have already been guarded in advance by police cars. Chenghua Avenue is also one of them. At this time, Lao Zhang and Xiao Liu are also deploying equipment and facilities in advance. Xiao Liu looked at the tool in his hand and fell into contemplation. He is holding a car stopper in his hand. It's the kind of nail that punctures the tire on the road. After a moment, he asked in an extremely skeptical tone. I said, Lao Zhang, are you sure this thing works for mechs? Lao Zhang jokingly said. What if the mech also uses tires? Do you care if it's useful? This is the command above. Looking around, the road surface is not only equipped with countless obstacles, but also with numerous obstacles. This level of arrangement is sufficient to handle all motor vehicles on the market. The two of them looked around. They also didn't expect that the authorities would attach so much importance to this matter. We have mobilized so many police forces and deployed so many roads. Xiao Liu asked curiously. Lao Zhang, do you think this mecha is a state secret? Zhang Guizheng smiled and said. Do you think if it weren't for confidentiality, it could have caused such a big battle on top? When have you ever seen someone up there so inspiring? In my opinion, this mech is likely to have some problem and cannot stop normally. Lao Zhang was speculating recklessly. Xiao Liu nodded with a sudden realization. If the person in charge of this operation, Captain Huang, heard these words, he would probably be very helpless. I really don't want to cause such a big battle. But we can't even catch it. Watching Xiao Liu finish installing the last car stopper, Lao Zhang finally took out the walkie-talkie in his hand. Report, deployment of Chenghua Avenue has been completed. At the same time, at the command center, which is the monitoring room. Nearly 20 traffic police officers gathered in this small surveillance room. Countless sounds echoed from the walkie-talkie one after another. Report, Xinyan Road deployment completed. Report, Dunyuandao deployment completed. Report, Yulin Avenue deployment completed. Report, the deployment of the Ring Road has been completed. At this moment, the team leader breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at the traffic police not far in front of him and said in a deep voice. Can you confirm that the mecha is still in the city? Sure. The other party's affirmative answer came. The team leader wiped the Han on his head and let out a breath. It's easy to handle within the city. All roads leaving the city are equipped with interception facilities deployed under his planning. If the Mecha leaves the city, it will really be over. He looked at nearly 20 traffic police officers in front of him, asking patiently. Have you seen the area where the Mecha has recently appeared? These 20 traffic police officers are sweating profusely. Although the squad leader is anxious, they are anxious. I've been watching for 20 minutes now and haven't found any traces of the Mecha. The most important thing is that these cameras cannot compare to high-speed cameras, and can only capture a momentary blue shadow. Almost. Huang Yong also raised his head to gaze through the densely packed screen. The surveillance room quieted down again. 5 minutes passed quietly. No one has yet witnessed the Mecha's course of action. At this moment, a sizzling sound came out, breaking the silence of the monitoring room. Report. A target was found on Huayang Road in Xiqing District and is currently moving towards the South China Road Expressway. The arrival of this sound instantly made almost everyone look towards the left side of the monitoring room. That is the location of Xiqing District. Sure enough, I saw a flashing blue shadow on the screen over there, which disappeared from the view of this camera in just an instant. Huang Yong was already holding the walkie-talkie and shouting loudly. A hoarse voice appeared in the ears of all traffic police through the walkie-talkie. All police forces are approaching South China Road. P.S. The new book is not easy. I beg everyone to give me some flowers, tips, feedback, and comments. Thank you. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 9. Returning without achievements. It's really too fast. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Returning without achievements. It's really too fast. Huang Yong suddenly laughed as he watched the surveillance footage. How could we possibly let go of such a perfect route? Immediately after, he opened the walkie-talkie in his hand again. All police cars are preparing to intercept on the South China section. In this surveillance room, almost everyone already thinks that this Mecha can't run. Arrest will be carried out through various duty traffic police officers and city-wide surveillance. Huang Yong smiled and shook his head. A mech. Even if it's a plane today, we have to stop it for him. Now they already know the route of the Mecha's operation, and they only need to arrange for surrounding police cars to arrive at the area early through a shortcut to achieve perfect interception. On the road to Xiqing District, dozens of police cars were constantly speeding with warning lights on. These police cars drift when passing through bends, which is just basic maneuvers. The scene made the surrounding onlookers exclaim in surprise. Sleeping groove, drifting. The traffic police who can hold the steering wheel in such actions are undoubtedly good hands in the traffic police team. If you can't even drift, you have no face to touch the steering wheel. Police cars passed by one after another, leaving behind pitch-black tire marks on the road. Before the masses could fully recover, the streets were left with only car exhaust. These police cars may even take off on bumpy roads. Under orderly command, countless police cars began to drive onto the same road. Only less than 5 kilometers away from the southern section of Xiqing District. Of course, Zhang Guizheng also received the task and was driving a police car in these queues, with Xiao Liu sitting in the passenger seat. He looked ahead calmly and said, "As long as you cross the S-shaped route 800 meters ahead, the remaining 4 kilometers will be the main straight. Maintain the current speed and you can reach your destination in less than 3 minutes." Xiao Liu on one side showed a frightened expression. Isn't the meaning of Lao Zhang's words about drifting again? And it's still continuous drift. Continuous drift, this driving operation, even for experienced drivers like Lao Zhang, poses a certain level of difficulty. This time, there are not as many police cars coming out together as before. Any mistake made by any car while drifting will cause a collision with the vehicles behind. The drift of continuous curves results in extremely high mastery of direction. A little carelessness will make it impossible to control. Dozens of cars are already very close to this continuous S-shaped curve. However, none of the cars had brake lights on. This indicates that no police car has slowed down. There is only one way to get through the curve at this speed. That's drift. When the creaking sound came from ahead, that means there are already vehicles drifting around the corner. No sound of collision was heard. Success. Another creaking sound came out. Another police car passed safely. One sound after another came out. In less than a minute, all police cars were able to safely pass through this S section of the road. No police car made a mistake. This is the driving level of traffic police. In this way, it only takes 2 minutes for all police cars to reach their deployment destination. In the western district of the city, a mecha flew past. In the cabin, little Loli looked around curiously like a baby. Although the speed of the mecha was like lightning, Su Chuan in the cabin was not affected in any way. As for the shaking, bumps, and even dizziness and discomfort caused by turning, they no longer exist. What are gravity and inertia? All of this seems to be out of Newton's control in this mech. Little Loli in the cabin looked into the distance through the screen, and her silly and cute eyes suddenly lit up. Wow! In the picture, there are police cars flashing alarms. At this moment, they were rapidly approaching towards this side. Naive Su Chuan exclaimed in amazement. Many police cars. At this moment, little Loli had no idea that these police cars were coming towards her. She looked at the police car approaching from afar with some curiosity. Are they catching bad guys? At this moment, the mecha suddenly made a response sound. Detecting motion trajectory. The detection is complete, and the target they are chasing is. A familiar image appeared on the screen of the cabin. This picture is clearly the mecha piloted by Xiao Liu. Su Chuan was completely unaware of the seriousness of the matter, but instead became even more excited. That silly and cute eyes looked at the innocent inquiry ahead. Are they racing against us? The dull sound of the mech came out. Probably, I guess so. Su Chuan clapped his hand and jumped up from the cabin. Okay. Someone's playing with me. She looked excitedly at the police car in the distance, even waving at it inside the mech. However, the traffic police outside clearly cannot see this scene. Outside the mecha, there are already many police cars following closely behind. At this pace, those pre-set police cars can completely intercept the mecha through shortcuts. Police cars rushed out through the fork in the road ahead, ready to intercept the mecha, but in the end, they were almost there. In the cabin, little Loli clenched her fists and shouted with a puff of air. Big robot, come on, we can't lose. Don't let them catch up. The mecha immediately responded. Do you want to accelerate again? Xiao Liu immediately nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Yes, yes. Big robot rushing. The mecha, which was originally traveling at high speed, suddenly increased in speed and instantly shook off the police car behind it. At this moment, the traffic police who were chasing in police cars were also blinded. What speed is this? This is a game that Captain Huang finally laid out. In just an instant, it broke through the encirclement of the police car. At the same time, it completely disappeared from the sight of the traffic police. The traffic police have a broken mentality. Xiao Liu took out the satellite intercom from his chest in a daze. Report. Report, I got lost. In the monitoring room of the traffic police detachment. Lost it. Upon hearing the report, the captain of the detachment, Huang Yong, was also bewildered. What are you joking about? How could it be lost in the carefully arranged encirclement of oneself? He immediately retorted angrily. How did you lose it? A weak sound came from the satellite intercom. It's accelerating again. Huang Yong. For a moment, he couldn't accept it, and he thought of any consequences of losing. I never expected that the method for the mech to break out of the enclosure would be so simple. With the full strength of the traffic management department, he returned empty-handed in the end. How should he explain this? P.S. The new book is not easy. I beg everyone to give me some flowers, tips, feedback, and comments. Thank you. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 10. Did the mech finally stop? No, it seems like. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Did the mech finally stop? No, it seems to have flown away. Traffic Police Detachment Monitoring Room. Nearly 20 people inside fell into silence, appearing incredibly quiet. Not only the Huang team, but also everyone did not expect such a result. At this moment, the phone on Huang Brigade suddenly rang. Huang Yong glanced around and took out his phone. Looking at the caller, he fell silent again. Caller, Zhou Ju. The telephone number of the director of the Traffic Management Bureau. How could he have the face to answer this phone call? The deputy detachment beside Huang Yong also sighed and said, "Take it on." Huang Yong nodded and struggled to press the connect button. On the phone, the voice of Zhou Ju came through. "Huang Yong, did the mecha stop you?" This is like a caring inquiry, which puts a lot of pressure on Huang Yong. Huang Yong opened his mouth and finally showed a smile that was even uglier than crying. Report the weekly situation, lost it. In just an instant, Zhou Ju staged a textbook-style comeback. The originally caring voice immediately became cold. What are you saying? Faced with this stern questioning, Huang Yong continued in a dry voice. I lost it. The voice on the other end of the phone was a bit louder. You have the guts to say it again. Faced with questioning, Huang Yong had no choice but to shout loudly. Report, lost. There was a moment of silence across the street. At this moment, Director Zhou, who dialed the phone, seemed to have been greatly insulted and couldn't speak. This is not an ordinary violation of laws and regulations. This is a provocation from Okamoto. Completely ignoring the traffic management department and not taking traffic safety seriously. He could see all the commotion throughout the journey. In such a big battle, I can't even catch that mecha. Director Zhou, who was originally a bit wary, was now completely angered. He shouted loudly at the phone. Even if satellite positioning is used, the entire city will be locked down. Before dawn tomorrow, you must give me this mecha. Otherwise, you don't have to come tomorrow. After saying these things, Director Zhou immediately hung up the phone. There is no room for defense for the other party. Now he has given a death order, even if this is a secret weapon developed by his brother's unit, we must give it to him today. In the monitoring room of the Traffic Police Detachment. Huang Yong looked at his phone with some bitterness. He looked around at the traffic police looking at him and immediately lifted his head and shouted angrily. What are you looking at? Didn't you hear me? Stop that blue mech before dawn. Otherwise, we don't have to do it anymore. Let's all work for me. Classic lessons learned from superiors, venting anger on subordinates. Huang Yong glanced at the deputy detachment beside him again. Old O, go and mobilize satellite positioning. Oping showed a surprised expression. Do you really need to use satellite positioning? Huang Yong pointed angrily at the densely packed display in front of him. Don't use satellites, do you expect these things to be able to see mechs? The deputy detachment was speechless, nodded and turned to leave. Soon, the command center was also relocated to the satellite monitoring room. Oping pointed to the rapidly moving blue dots on the satellite map and said. Captain, look, this is the mech. Huang Yong nodded and said in a deep voice. Is there a pattern in the mecha's actions? Oping shook his head in response. I haven't found any obvious patterns yet, but I noticed that it now seems to actively avoid surrounding police cars. At this moment, Huang Yong smiled. That's easy to handle. He pointed to a location on the satellite map and said. Set up a pocket formation at this location in advance, and the remaining police force will be used to drive away the target. Chasing, blocking, intercepting, and dredging. As long as the target enters the pocket formation, this mecha cannot escape with its wings inserted. The deputy detachment on one side also lit up their eyes and gave a thumbs up. Hi. Indeed, the yellow team has experience. How can we achieve such a perfect plan? It's so seamless. At this moment, just as Huang Yong was about to give orders, the walkie-talkie in his chest suddenly rang. Report, the goal seems to have come to a halt. Huang Yong and O Ping looked at each other in confusion. Mech, has it stopped? At this moment, Captain Huang also took a closer look at the satellite map. Sure enough, the blue dots on the map stopped. He patted the members working in front of him and urgently shouted. Can you switch to the scene captured by the traffic police? The staff were frantically moving, and soon a first-person view of the traffic police appeared in their eyes. Huang Yong also saw the appearance of the mecha for the first time in person. The mecha is blue all over, with an extremely beautiful appearance, even more magnificent than the mecha in science fiction movies. If the screen is magnified several times, you can also see the complex patterns faintly appearing on the mecha. At this moment, even Huang Yong had to exclaim in surprise. I'm so good, Nima is really a mecha. At the scene, countless police cars were parked cautiously in the surrounding area. Everyone showed a shocked expression. They are witnesses at the scene, seeing the full view of the mecha. At this moment, facing the suddenly stopped mecha. These traffic police have not acted recklessly for the time being. In just a moment, countless police cars surrounded this mecha. A traffic police officer said with some confusion. Did we stop here? Has the action been successful even though a thorough plan has just been formulated and has not been implemented yet? A person flipped out a loud gong from the police car, seemingly preparing to collude with the mech. Inside the mecha, in the cabin. Little Loli suddenly felt a bit bored. At first it was a bit interesting, but the prolonged ground navigation made her a bit bored. Su Yennoa glanced around. Look, even the police uncle wants to play with me. She looked around and finally looked up at the sky. Su Yennoa's mouth slowly opened, as if shaken by the beautiful scenery. Wow! Her eyes reflected a galaxy of stars. Almost the next moment, the voice of little Loli's anticipation came. Can we fly? I want to fly. The mechanical sound of the mech rang out. Flight mode ready. At the next moment, the mecha's body began to change and flames began to erupt from the soles of its feet. The mecha also began to slowly leave the ground. Accompanied by the sound of little Loli woohoo. The mecha flew into the air. At this moment, the command center heard the sound again. Report, the mech has stopped. Report, the mecha has flown again. P.S. The new book is not easy. I beg everyone to give me some flowers, tips, feedback, and comments. Thank you. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th.